Hey folks, welcome back to our channel. My name is Nigel and this is Offgrid Van Life, where we look at off-grid power, solar power solutions, van conversions and everything in between. Basically, we want to help you to get on the road, to find adventure and to have the best time doing it, and also have the best equipment and van conversion possible. We've been doing this for years and years. We drove a camper van all the way to Bulgaria from the UK and back in 2007. So we've been doing this for many years, have extensive experience of overlanding, van life, all that sort of good stuff. So one of the things that we get asked on pretty much every video that we put out related to lithium iron phosphate batteries or custom batteries or BMSs or whatever the case is questions around the Daly BMSs. And I know we've done videos comparing the different sizes. So I have the range, which is the 100 amp, 150 amp, 200 amp and 300 amp BMS in front of me here, and these we will offer in stock in the UK on our web store. So if you're looking for a local supplier that can help you and support you and will support the product as well, then hit us up. We'd love to help you with that. But what I'm going to be looking at in this video is aspects of where do I plug everything in on the BMS. I'm going to show you exactly where it goes and also the difference between the different generations of BMSs. So Daly have done a few things which improves the BMSs, and it's something to look out for. And also, if you're not going to buy, say, from us, but if you're going to buy directly from Daly, then you're going to want to maybe ask some questions and it'll hopefully give you a bit more info into what we do. So one of the popular things that we get asked is, where can I buy these on switches? So if you have not a really old, but if you have one of the Daly BMSs that doesn't have the on switch on the Bluetooth module, then we recommend installing something like this. It's just a very elementary, simple on switch. And what this does is it wakes up your Bluetooth. So Daly have designed their BMSs that the Bluetooth module goes to sleep if it's been inactive for a certain length of time. The main reason for this is just to conserve power. So obviously it uses power to broadcast the signal. So to optimize the usage of your battery, the BMS module goes to sleep after a certain length of time. And so that's why sometimes when you go into the app, you cannot find the Bluetooth module on your app. So that's what this wakes up. And then also, if you disconnect your balance leads from your BMS to do some maintenance on your battery and then reconnect them, obviously your BMS will then be off and it'll be reading a voltage of somewhere around 3 volts, 3.2 volts, something like that. And you have to then turn the BMS back on. So by having this switch on there, it enables you just to turn it on. You don't have to dig and find those 2 pins, which I'll show you now, that have to be connected in order to turn the BMS on. And this is this Daly Smart BMS range. Some of the other Daly models, like the ones that don't have Bluetooth, have a different method for turning them on. So some of them you have to actually bridge the 2 cables that come out of the BMS in order to turn it on, that sort of thing. So there are different ways of doing that, but I'm going to be just looking at these ones here. So we're going to start off with the Daly 100 amp BMS. So that's this one here. This is a great little guy. If your usage requirements are not that high amperage, then this is a really good option to go for. I'm going to talk you through where everything goes. So your balance leads, out of all of these 4 BMSs that are in front of me, these 3, the 150, 200 and 300 amp BMS, Smart BMS, use the same size plug and pretty much the same balance leads. But for some strange reason, Daly gave the 100 amp BMS different balance leads and a different plug, which in my mind is crazy, just because there's plenty of room on the back of it where the plug goes to have the same plug. And why they didn't have it uniform, I don't know. But this is where the balance leads go. So on the back end of the BMS, opposite to where the 2 big cables come out, the balance leads just plug in there. And it can only go in one way, and it goes in until it clicks, and you can hear it click. So that's where the balance leads go. The temperature probe here goes into this one, this port over here, which is labeled NTC. And so again, this can only go one way. You just have to figure out, there's like a pillar on the top of the cable that goes in there. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll get a little flat head screwdriver and just push in the side of the cable, obviously being careful not to actually cut the wires coming out of there. Then your Bluetooth module. Bluetooth modules, this is where some differences come in. So this is a slightly older 100 amp BMS, and when I mention differences, this is essentially what Daly have done here. Yeah, this is it here. So if you look at these two Bluetooth modules, this one here on the right, which is what came with that 100 amp BMS, this one here on the left, which came with the 150 amp BMS, and they're literally only a few months apart in terms of when they were shipped to us from Daly. This one here is the older one. As you can see on the front here, it has no switch, whereas this one here on the left has a very small switch just there by my finger, just where it says Bluetooth. And that switch is essentially the same function as what we do when we install these here. So in terms of functionality of the BMS and performance and that, there's really no difference. Uses the same software, app and all that sort of stuff. But it's just really, that's the only difference that we found. And it's quite a nice addition that Daly have put in. But so on this 100 amp BMS, the Bluetooth module goes into the port that's labeled UART. And again, it can only go one way, so there's two pillars on the top of the plug. And again, sometimes I'll just get a flathead screwdriver, put it across without damaging the wires, and plug that in. So that is where your Bluetooth module goes in, just over there to the UART plug. Okay, so if you, like us, install one of these, so this is just an on switch we get from Amazon, and the plug, and I'll link both of these below, so if you want to get those and you're interested, then you can jump on those. But where these go is on this side here, on the opposite side of the 100 amp BMS, on the opposite side to where the Bluetooth and the temperature probe go. They go on into this port here, which is, if you're facing it, it's to the right of the labeled monitor. So hopefully you can see that there, but it just goes in here. I'll just put it in and then show you. And again, this can only go one way, this plug, and I do the same. I will often get a flathead screwdriver, just push it in, make sure it's seated in there properly. But that's where the plug goes for your on switch. And so if you're not installing the on switch, those are the two pins just to the right of where it says monitor on the 100 amp BMS. Those are the two pins that you have to bridge in order to turn the BMS on. So when you first connect everything up, that's where you would bridge your connection to turn the BMS on. And so that's the 100 amp BMS. If we move on to the 150 amp BMS, pretty straightforward. A lot of it's very similar. So the balance leads, they just go in the same sort of area, just on the end of the BMS, opposite to where the big cables come out. The nice thing with the 150 amp BMS is that everything is on the same side. So your Bluetooth module goes into the same port here, and again, it can only go one way. So it goes into the UART port over there, as you can see. And then your temperature probe goes into the same port on this as well, into the one that says NTC. So that's just on the end here. And then if for some reason you did want to install one of these on switches, or you got a 150 amp BMS with a Bluetooth module that didn't have the on switch on the Bluetooth module. So if you have a look just there next to where it says Bluetooth, you can see that little round switch there. But if you did want to install one of these on switches that you get from Amazon into here, it goes into this section here on the 150 amp BMS that says light board between the UART and the temperature probe. It goes in here into pin number 5 and 6. So if you count them across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there we go. So that's basically what it would look like on the 150 amp BMS. You can see there that little cable coming out, and obviously you would join your actual switch onto the end there, probably extend the wires. But that goes into pin number 5 and 6. So essentially, to turn this BMS on, if you don't have the on button on your Bluetooth module, then you need to bridge pin 5 and 6 on the port that is labeled light board. Okay, moving on to the 200 amp BMS. Again, very straightforward for the balance leads. So the balance leads go just on the end opposite the big cables, and again can only go in one way and clip, and that's when you know that they are seated correctly. And then again, your Bluetooth module and your temperature probe go in the same spot over here where it's labeled UART and NTC. So those go in there. Again, this is one of the slightly older generation Bluetooth modules has no switch on it. So on this BMS, if we were installing it on a battery, we would then put in this on switch, and on the 200 amp BMS, the on switch goes in on the opposite side to where your Bluetooth module and your temperature probe go, and it goes in just next to it goes in the port just to the right of where it says monitor. So that is where your on switch would go in, the 2 pins directly to the left, of where it says monitor. So your monitor is there, and then the next 2 ports there, next 2 pins is where your on switch would go. And again, you would obviously extend this with a longer small cable going to your on switch, and those 2 pins are what you would use to turn the BMS on or wake it up if it has gone to sleep. And then finally, this big guy here, the 300 amp BMS. We've just recently started using this. We built a custom battery for a gentleman that needed to be able to run a 3 kilowatt inverter on his battery. And so we got a stock of these, and it's been interesting and fun playing with something so big. Okay, again, your Bluetooth module goes into the port that's labeled UART, as you can see over there. And again, this is a slightly newer model of Bluetooth dongle, so it has the little switch on the opposite side over there. So that's the on switch on the Bluetooth module. So in this particular battery, we wouldn't actually install one of those third-party on switches because it's not necessary. And your temperature probe goes into the same port, NTC over there, and that just will sit in your cell somewhere. And then finally, your balance leads go again on the opposite side to the big cables just over there, and again can only go one way and just goes in until it clicks. One of the questions that we got recently from a gentleman was, is it okay for him to extend the balance leads on his BMS, or should he just leave them as is, because he's heard from some people that it's not a good idea to do it. And so in general, it's not a problem to extend the balance leads. However, there is one thing you have to be careful of, and that is to make sure that you don't cause opportunity for the balancing to go out of sync by having different size or different gauge wires across your different balance leads or different lengths. So those 2 factors can affect the balancing, because obviously if you have different sized wiring, different gauge wiring across different balance leads, the voltage drop on those will be different. So that may affect the balancing, and obviously the length of the cables will affect the balancing as well. So provided that you keep them all exactly the same length and the joins are at the same point in the leads, there shouldn't be a big difference on it. And to be honest, it's not passing huge currents anyway. And generally there is often a slight variation in terms of resistance in battery cells. Obviously, it's advisable to match them and request that your manufacturer or your reseller matches them. That's what we do when we send out cells. We always check the resistance, internal resistance on the cells, and make sure that they're matched and to within a certain threshold so that they are good and work together well. But yeah, that answers that question. You can extend the cables, but just make sure that they are done to the same length and using the same size cable for each of these wires. So yeah, I think that sums up all of the Daly BMSs here and where you should plug things in. Again, as I mentioned, we'll link this guy down in the description below if you are interested in getting that. We just get those from Amazon. To be honest, it was just trial and error where we just tried like 4 or 5 different plugs. It was mainly the plug that we had to try a few to find the right one. So we'll link that down in the description below, and hopefully that's helpful if you can if you want to buy some of those on Amazon. And again, as I mentioned, we stock all of these at our UK shop and ship all over Europe. So if you're looking for a local supplier that will stand by and support the product, help you with advice and things like that, and obviously has it in stock locally where we can ship it within a day, then that will hopefully be helpful for you. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Cheers. Thank you.